The first Swan Princess movie wasn't anything spectacular, but it had pretty good music, the animation was nice, and the characters were likable even if a lot of the choices they made were a little weird. The first was released in 1994, with its sequel, Escape from Castle Mountain, coming out in 1997. In this one, Prince Derek gets... I'm not sure if you could call it a downgrade, considering what a pill he was sometimes in the first one when it came to Odette and how he treated her and looked at women in general, but it's bad in a different way. A sideways downgrade? I don't. But either way, it's not great. When the movie begins, it's his and Odette's anniversary, Odette having planned a romantic dinner which he keeps being reminded of and insisting he'll get around to later. But he's more focused on catching a vandal who has been causing damage around the kingdom. He ends up having to rush out to help deal with a fire that's been started by the vandal, a man named Knuckles. No, not an echidna, though they do have a very similar body shape. And missing their anniversary entirely. Odette quickly rushes out to give aid as well, bringing blankets and water to help control the fires and help the wounded. Derek seems genuinely upset that he missed their anniversary and promises to make it up to her and that she will be his priority from now on, which we can all see falling through instantly from a mile away. This guy just doesn't know how to manage time, even with people all around him whose job it is just to try and keep him on track. He's just so oblivious. He gets focused on one thing and nothing else exists to him. Well, this Knuckles guy isn't the big bad of the movie, though at first it may seem like he is. No, he's only the henchman to a sorcerer named Clavius. Apparently he and Rothbart worked together to make the forbidden arts, which were contained in an orb for some reason instead of just something they learned and trained in the way Rothbart did in the first, but I suppose that's to make him easier to defeat in the end, since this is when the whole heroes can't kill the villains, so the villains need to die by their own hand somehow thing had already gotten started and was infecting media all over. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that ending a life should be treated flippantly, but when someone is harming you and the people you care about, it doesn't make you a bad person to end them and put a stop to the harm they're doing. The Axis powers in World War II weren't stopped by asking nicely. It's one of the problems that I've always had with Batman, obviously. The Joker goes around killing thousands, but Batman just puts him in Arkham over and over with its revolving door because he just doesn't want to be as bad as the Joker? My dude, stuff your ego. Every time you put him behind bars and he gets out again, that's hundreds of kids who are going to be orphans. Hundreds of parents and spouses, sons and daughters, who aren't coming home that night, and did nothing to deserve what happened to them. For that matter, why hasn't the city itself given him the death penalty? He's more than earned it in a single crime spree. Oh well. Anyhow, the vandalism that Knuckles keeps committing under Clavius' orders keeps Derek constantly busy, making him neglect his wife and, even worse, his clingy and emotional mother, Queen Uberta. Her 50th birthday rolls around. Really? She's only 50? Huh. I thought she was much older by the hair and all, but okay. She gets a bunch of cards for it from other nobility, and she's offended that they mention how old she is now. My lady dude, not liking it doesn't change what the number is. I'm 35. As much as I wish I could subtract a decade from that, I can't, and that's just life. Time keeps flowing no matter what we do. All we can do is try to enjoy the ride and make it meaningful. Queen Uberta was insistent that Derek had to have something big planned for her, even after he forgot about his own anniversary because, well, she's his mother, and she kinda seems to think the world revolves around her, so how could her son forget her? When it becomes clear that isn't the case, she ends up crying on a balcony when she is overjoyed to see a hot air balloon with a happy birthday banner floating down to where she and her servant Chamberlain are. A clown aboard the balloon tells her that there's a big party set up for her at Swan Lake, and he's there to take her to it. She happily boards the balloon, which turns out to be a mistake, as when it's in the air and she can't get away, the clown reveals himself to be the sorcerer Clavius, kidnapping her as bait for Derek. Now, as much as sometimes I find Uberta annoying with how clingy and pushy she is, she's also kind of my favorite character because of just how wildly entertaining she is. She doesn't cower or cry the way Odette tends to when presented with a challenge. She straight up starts strangling Clavius and giving him a beatdown, and chewing him out for ruining her birthday. He manages to take control of the situation for the most part, and has Knuckles take her to her cell, but even when overpowered physically, Uberta still takes control of the situation, treating Knuckles like her servant and instructing him in the proper way to escort a queen, making him decorate her cell more appropriately to her tastes, and bringing her tea and snacks of her choice, making Clavius absolutely miserable every moment she's there. A letter that Clavius left behind for Derek tells the prince that his mother has been taken, and Derek immediately wants to go after him, rushing out blindly, mostly tearing himself up with guilt for not having been there for his mother to begin with. While everyone is distracted, Clavius sneaks into the castle to steal the orb containing the forbidden arts, kidnapping Odette and locking her in a tower. Someone very familiar is there too, Bridget, who used to be Rothbart's lackey. One thing that happens here never really made sense to me. For one, when did she turn good, and how? Why did we never get to see her growth and change? Also, Clavius clearly recognizes her and calls her Rothbart's little stooge before she tears her clothes off and for some reason is wearing her old uniform underneath it. That must be really rank if she's always wearing it under her clothes like that. And everyone gasps in shock as if they're surprised it's her? They clearly all knew who she was. Why are they surprised that she is the person they already knew she was? A big chase ensues where they get the orb and rush up to the tower to free Odette, but they know they can't reach Derek in time to warn him of the trap he's headed into since Puffin got hurt and can't fly, leading Odette to tell Bridget to turn her into a swan so she can fly out to warn him. Apparently now all the animals can talk to humans, even the ones who were never turned into animals themselves, so Derek can understand her even when she's a swan. Odette flies away to save Derek, with Clavius finding the rest of the group and trapping them in the cellar, taking the orb for himself. Odette manages to find Derek after he'd already stumbled into a quicksand trap and saves him, with him in clear shock seeing her as a bird again. Getting back to the castle, they see Clavius leaving in his hot air balloon to return to his volcano lair. Why do people keep building lairs in volcanoes? It never turns out well. Ever. Speed, Jean-Bob, and Puffin are all clinging to a rope hanging from the balloon, trying to sneak along. Derek and Odette follow, with Knuckles attacking them and very nearly killing Derek, who falls for the whole you can't actually kill off the bad guys thing and saves Knuckles from falling, only for Knuckles to attack him again and, of course, lose balance and end up falling into the lava below due to his own actions rather than getting offed by the heroes. Clavius is celebrating getting his powers back with a surprising banger of a song, but Derek arrives and the animals free Uberta from her cell so they can escape. During the fight, Derek is clearly losing, Jean-Bob trying to help and jumping on Clavius' head, stopping him from finishing off Derek but getting zapped himself for it, which seems to kill him. Derek is able to get a hold of the orb, which could destroy everything in the vicinity if he breaks it, so Clavius can't get near them as they all back into his hot air balloon and use it to escape. Clavius grabs a rope and sneaks into the hot air balloon to fight for the orb, but it gets dropped, as does he, and the orbs shatter, causing the entire volcano to explode, with the heroes barely making it out of the path of danger in the hot air balloon and Clavius going down with the mountain. With the orb destroyed, they can't revive Jean-Bob or turn Odette back into a human. Their only hope is that some of the residual magic from the spell Rothbart cast before can fix things, so they go to Swan Lake and have her sit on the water, holding Jean-Bob in her wings. As the moon rises, everyone's praying for it to work, and at first, it seems like it doesn't. But the moonlight shimmers, and Odette is turned back into a human and Jean-Bob is brought back to life. Everyone celebrates, and Huberta gets the big birthday party she wanted. Later on, Rogers comes to tell Derek that a guest has arrived and is demanding to speak with him, but he tells Rogers to just let them know that he is unavailable, because he's going to be spending time with his wife. It seems that he learned his lesson about neglecting his loved ones, even if he did generally have a good reason for why he was so distracted before. The Swan Princess got a lot of sequels, and this was definitely one of the better ones. While the third was also pretty entertaining in its own way, and I may cover it as well, it lacked a lot of the charm and went overboard on some concepts, and after they just got steadily worse and worse. And once they went to CG animation instead of the 2D, it didn't even have visual appeal anymore. They were just ugly. The Christmas one was probably the worst, but it's tough to really pick because they were all pretty bad at that point. This one was still entertaining, had good animation and music, and a decent point about making sure to make time for the people you love. The villain song wasn't quite at Disney levels, but it was still kind of a banger, and I just love Huberta and how she took charge of any situation she was in, regardless of her age or how physically outclassed she was. She didn't have to be the strongest person in the room. Her willpower was just overwhelming, and she clearly wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Considering that Odette spent a good chunk of the year with her throughout her childhood, you'd think that Odette would have picked some of that up. But apparently, she took to being a delicate waifish princess too readily to remember that these hands are rated E for everyone, and wearing big royal rings just mean your punches hurt more. Huberta was definitely the star of the show this time around, and she's just incredibly entertaining. I really hate the character assassination she ended up with in later sequels. She was just such a fun character in the earlier movies. Overall, I really enjoyed this one and consider it worth watching, if mostly for Huberta herself. It was kind of clunky in some areas, and there were some moments that just made no sense, like how everyone knows already who Bridget is, but they act shocked when they saw that she is the person they knew she was all along already. I don't know, that part was just weird. Derek was really holding the idiot ball this time around, but to a certain extent, you can kind of understand that with the stress he was under with all of the stuff going on in the kingdom, and how he seemed to be in charge of dealing with it all, even if he's still only a prince and his mother is the queen, so she should really be the one in charge of making sure things get done. Though, I suppose she might be leaving him in charge more to prepare him for when she's gone and he has to rule without her guiding him, but she also seems like the type who really likes being in control and knowing everything that's going on at all times, so I'm surprised she was genuinely out of the loop so much. Still, her interactions with the villains are easily the most entertaining parts of the movie. Even if you skip the rest of it, those scenes are definitely worth watching. Thank you all for joining me. I hope everyone is staying safe and taking steps to protect yourselves and your loved ones, and just tending to your health right now, especially your mental health. Make sure to take breaks from the internet once in a while. Yes, that includes taking breaks from videos like mine. And just go do something that doesn't require wires or screens. Tend to some plants, maybe try to grow some vegetables or something of your own at home, even if it's nowhere near enough to really change your grocery bill. Go for a hike or visit one of those small local museums that get overlooked so often. Go to one of those bookstores that sells donated books and find something interesting to read. I found this one book that I picked up purely because of the leather binding and the woodcock, that's a type of bird, mine's out of the gutter please, on the cover, and it's been pretty darn interesting. It's called The Warwick Woodlands and was written in 1934. The slang and the general way they spoke is really entertaining to read, even if it's a little tricky to parse sometimes, and I grew up out in the boonies where plenty of folks still talked like that. You never know what kind of hidden treasures you can find at secondhand stores or estate sales. It's always worth looking, and you may even find a new passion. Be safe, stay warm, and I'll see you in the next one.